Hello, everyone. Welcome to Talk About It Tuesday. I'm Tosca your host and founder of Tosca Coaching and Consulting. And I am just so excited for today's conversation with Cate Luzio, founder and CEO of Luminary. We are going to talk about how to get through the hard times. And I'm excited for this, especially today, especially this week, because oftentimes the holidays can be the hard times as well. So, Cate, I'm going to bring you on in just a second. For those of you who don't know me, I do this platform because I believe in bringing different voices to the table for healing, for personal development, and leadership growth. So without further ado, I'm going to bring Cate Luzio on. Hello.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can. I'm so happy to be in this space with you. And I just want to, I'm going to hand it over to you for you to introduce yourself. But I just want to say, Cate, that I just am so thrilled to be in conversation with you today. And, as I was preparing this morning, I was just thinking about just your immense generosity and the conversation that I had with you when I first met you. And I remember we were at the Luminary space, and you just were you were so wholeheartedly supportive of the work that I want to do in the world around culture change. And I got to tell you, that has stuck with me and stayed with me to say, I feel lifted and supported by you, and then as we've kind of developed our relationship, it's just such an honor to see the depth of your generosity and passion for what you're doing in the world. So long way of saying I'm honored that you've taken time to be with me today.
Are you kidding me? I'm psyched, and I try to be very strategic with my time, as you can imagine. But anytime I connect with a member at Luminary, and we connected right before the pandemic, which was crazy to think how long it's been. I feed off everyone else's energy. That's how I get my energy. So I immediately sensed yours. I loved what you were starting to do. I loved your journey. And I love that you were unapologetic about the changes that you were making in your life. And what's been really unique about the pandemic is I've got to know you in a different way because of that. And I think that's not an uncommon story we're hearing, but certainly for Luminary, it's why one of the reasons why I started this company and this community and this organization and this mission was to do exactly what we're doing today.
Oh, amazing. Yes, because I said to myself, Cate, if I was consulting you, I'd be like, don't go on Tosca's platform. You've got bigger platforms to be on.
No,
and I was like, let me not sabotage myself here. But yeah, so what I like to do, I just want to ask, for you to introduce yourself. But part of my question around that is what in your life experiences has made you? What are those profound things that are the fabric of how you are where you are today, if I might ask?
Oh my gosh, we need a long time for that. So I started Luminary. It's hard to believe we soft launched the company just 3 years ago. It was right around Women's Entrepreneurship Day. I don't think I even knew that was a day. I was so heads down in building the company, but it was after a very long career in corporate America, right? Almost 20 of those in banking. And there have been a lot of hard times and challenges through that. But when I started the company, I will tell you, it was probably the most exciting 8 months of my life, and also some of the hardest. We were 14 months old when the pandemic hit. So I don't think I could have ever imagined pre-becoming an entrepreneur what it was like to be an entrepreneur. We hear it's hard, we hear the roller coaster, but so much of what I went through in 22 years of corporate America, I think prepared me but from a skills standpoint, but also emotionally, and how do I get through this, and how do I keep going? And so now here we are, we've been a company longer in a pandemic than not in a pandemic, which when you write your business plan, that is not something that you are preparing for. So there are a lot of things that I've gone through just in this past 20 months, certainly in the 3 years that we've started the company. But even before that, from a kid all the way through my, building my career in banking, there's a lot of stuff that I went through, goods and bads, but a lot of challenges that made me who I am today. And I start with just being a kid, right? I was a girl. I have a brother on both sides of me, and it was early on. You've got two very strong characters that are growing up with you, and you need to make your way. And I think that was a very early lesson that I learned, that I had to be me. I had to learn who that was and embrace who that was, which sounds odd because I was little, but my dad and mom were very vocal about whether it's a piece of pizza on the plate, that last pizza, or a sport or a book, you have to make it your own. You have to go after it. And so I think that sort of that very early part of my journey, and then playing boys sports for most of my athletic career, gave me a lot to kind of chew on and develop on and learn from.
And so would you say, like, your awareness of the plight for females in general, like, were you aware of that early on, or was it just life? You were just like making your way with, these two brothers, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it was a little bit of both. I mean, I definitely recognized early on, because I was a girl in my neighborhood. I was really one of the only girls amongst lots of boys. And I remember being told, well, you can't play football with us. You can't play stickball. Mm-hmm. And, one of those first couple times coming in and kind of, crying or being, weepy about it, my parents were like, no, you can play. Just go out there and play. You are just as good as any of them, if not better. And if you want to let them push you around, then that's going to happen forever. Right. Mm. And so was it easy? No. And I think it was the same in sports. I recognized that I was one of the only few girls at the time. It's obviously changed now. I was one of the only few girls that on a boys team, if ever. I for many teams that I played on, particularly soccer, I was the only girl. And then as I progressed into, high school, I was forced to be playing on a girls team. So I actually went through, Tosca, this kind of battle in my head. I was playing with boys. They were making me great. I was learning to be ultra, competitive, but a team, a leader. And then it was all of a sudden I had to go play with girls. And I had never played with all girls. And so on the one hand, it was like, well, wait, and here's these girls I can now play with, my friends, and I know them. But on the other hand, why can't I just play with these boys? I'm just as good as them. So that was always sort of a thing in my head. And when I got into banking, I wasn't trained as a banker. I had no finance background or accounting, and it was obviously mainly men. And for me, it didn't even click that it was just guys. I just knew that skills-wise, I was behind. I had to pick up and learn very quickly. It wasn't until I sort of accelerated in my career that I really started to look around and go, wait a second, this is kind of like what I was in soccer. I'm the only girl, or one of the only girls, excuse me. And that's not, I don't want to just play with only boys anymore. It's got to be balanced. And I know why. And then that just became sort of a personal mission of mine to make a change.
So there's like, even what you shared, right? There's like lots of hard times in that, like kind of like there's being the only, there's like new industry, there's like new surroundings. I know early on in COVID, you got COVID, like the list goes on and on about the challenges in your life. And I'm curious, like, your view on challenges. Like, are you like, give it to me, bring it on, world, because like I'm just gonna get better? Or are you like, oh my god, fucking again, like another challenge? Like, you know what I mean? Like, where are you at with the hard stuff, like,
If you ask my mom, she would say, I don't know how many phone calls I've gotten from you when I'm like, what the hell is going on? Why is so much? Everything's happening at once. And my mom always says, and she's extremely spiritual, and I wish I was half as spiritual as her. God will only give you what you can handle, right? So for me, I love a challenge. I thrive in a challenge situation. I thrive when there's a problem, and I've got to either solve that problem, overcome that problem, and that's just kind of who I am. I am the problem solver. I'm the fixer. That's sometimes to my detriment, but for me, I always knew that when I was getting a little bit, I don't know if the word is tuning out in a job, the challenges weren't there anymore. I need a challenge. And so in that last banking world before I left, it was no longer challenging. I knew how to run the business. I was running a big business. It was great. But honestly, what was challenging more in that organization and in that industry was the fact that we weren't seeing the numbers for women. And so my challenge actually organically became, wait a second, if I'm not seeing it in my one organization or more broadly the industry, what do other industries look like? And you get so, again, heads down, sort of knees deep in what is your industry or your company. And I wasn't really recognizing what was happening in tech or retail or CPG. And so once I picked my head up, I'm like, wait a second, it's not just one bank or finance. It's literally every industry. And how is it still the same as it was, 10 years ago? And then that became this challenge inside of me that wouldn't go away, right? I couldn't have a conversation, Tosca, without talking about it. I couldn't sit with a client without saying, so what's your career progression for your women? Are they CFOs? Are they going to be the CEO? And then I realized, wait a second. And actually one of my mentors realized it first and said, I think you can have more impact in a different way, or different impact in a different way. And it doesn't have to be in the bank. And, never say never. I loved what I did, and I loved banking, and I still do. And it's why Luminary works with so many banks to invest in their pipeline. But this is a very different kind of challenge. It keeps me going. It also kicks my ass because I still get frustrated with the numbers. COVID has obviously disproportionately impacted women and women of color so much. It's like, how are we going back in time? We're in 2021. And so, personally, professionally, it is, I love the challenge. Some days I just wish that it was like a little less. Can I get a little bit of a break? But then, you know what my boyfriend will say, or my parents will say, then it wouldn't be you, right? That is what you love to do. And you love to take on challenges for others and help them. And so that's part of, why Luminary for me is so impactful, because I get to meet members like you, not to say you had a challenge, but listen to what you're doing, listen to the challenges or the struggles or the opportunities, and say, where can the organization or even me personally help out? I can't solve their problem, but maybe I can be part of a solution or a way to get from A to B to C.
Yeah, and trust. Plenty of challenges. That's a whole nother podcast or whatever. But there's two things that come up for me in what you just shared. And number one is I was listening to this podcast around activism and joy, and there's a book coming out. I can't remember her name. Brene Brown interviewed her, but it was about this idea of these problems that we're trying to solve. They're not going to be solved in our lifetime. So how do we find the joy in the activism? Right? Great. Yeah, it was just an amazing concept, and I totally plan to get it. But that's what I think about, because how do you keep your cup full when you're trying to change the world and change these situations that aren't going to happen, unfortunately, while we're still alive. They're not going to be what we want them to be. Right? It's not like I know how to make this cake. I'm going to put this in, and then I'm going to have the gratification that I made the cake.
Right. No, you're exactly right. And how do you keep going? And it is hard. I think in whether you're running your own company, you're building your career, you're, whatever journey you're on, people will. I always thought, and I'll go back to the banking world. So when I was, that is a very A to B, B to C, C to D, sort of, you can be very linear in that career path. And so as a Gen Xer, I was, okay, what's the next goal? Where's the next milestone? And one of the, in banking, the sort of a very thing you aspire to be as a managing director. It's a top leadership position in the banks. And so for me, it was, okay, if I can get to that, I'm going to be good. I've made it. And I had a goal to do it by the time I was 35. I think I was 33 or 34. Oh my gosh, I made it. And then I remember getting the promotion. There's a big deal. And we sat in a room with other newly promoted MDs. All the banks do this. And there was a very senior person in the room, a very senior man. And he said, you think you've made it, but the hard work has just begun. Because now you are at such a high level, you're a senior leader, there's pressure, your performance is even being further evaluated, right? Much more intensely. And you have a lot of people that are looking up to you. So this is where the hard part starts. And I remember looking around saying, wait, no. I thought this was, and he goes, so enjoy this day.
Wow. Because that's all you're going to get.
Yeah.
Wow.
And, cheers to everyone. And he was right. And he was right. And for good reason. We think that once you hit, you've raised X amount of money, you've built this, that it just gets easy. And it's actually, that's more responsibility, more pressure, more power that you have to know what to do with, more lives in your hands if you think about employees and the livelihood. And so, and bigger, metrics and bigger performance evaluations. And, so it's the same in entrepreneurship, right? And in entrepreneurship, all that becomes, you're putting that on yourself. So when we think about navigating in a company, you still have infrastructure around you. You still have a boss, you have mentors, you have sponsors, blah, blah. When you do that, when you take yourself out of that and you're doing it on your own, I often say that I don't have a boss. I miss that part because whether it was, hey, here's your goals and you need to, make those goals and here's how you're going to do it. In the good times, it was like, great, pat on the back, you're doing a great job, but here's your feedback. We all need that, right? Or at least I do, because it makes me do better. It makes me listen more. It makes me learn more. It makes me get better. And I'm 46 years old. I want to continually get better, right? I want to be a better manager, a better leader, build a better company, be a better member in the community, all of those things. And so I think as an entrepreneur, it can get a little bit harder because you don't have that constant someone saying, yes, no, do this, do that. So I think women right now can have 10 careers or more in their lifetime. And I think we have to evaluate those. We are very, we calculate risk, and we also have long memories of those hard times. So for me, all of that is part of my story, even personally going through, significant fertility challenges. That's made me a better person. That's made me a better manager, a better leader, a better sister, a better friend. And, I try to take, it's hard when you're in the moment, Tosca, about taking something from every challenge and that hard time, and then looking back and say, I got through that. That's amazing. Pat myself on the back. I got through it. Now I can go on to the next one.
Yeah, you've mentioned you're like a problem solver, right? And you have this like, I'm gonna go get it, I'm gonna go figure this out mentality. And so what does it look like for you when you're in like the hard time? You know what I mean? Because there's hard times, it's like, I've got this challenge to solve. And then I think there's like hard times in life that go deeper than like being able to fix it in the moment, right? So, because look, everything that you just talked about is like fertility and like being an entrepreneur, all those things. And I know relationship challenges, like.
Yeah, I think for me, I have used this analogy a couple of times in the last couple of weeks. So Sarah LaFleur, who's the founder and CEO of Emma LaFleur, she told me when I first started on my journey, I met her and she's become a friend. And she said, you just have to keep swimming. And I've taken that analogy now to my own and say, okay, some days I'm going to be doing freestyle and I am like full charge ahead. Some days I'm doing backstroke. Some days I'm bobbing. Some days I'm treading. Some days I'm like not even going anywhere, but I'm still swimming. I think for me, these hard times and the challenges, as we have to give ourselves a little bit of a break, and cut ourselves some slack time sometimes. It's not always, right? Because that keeps me going. The challenges is say it's okay. It's okay. I'm a perfectionist. I'm a type A. I'm an overachiever. Every word you can use to describe my family, my friends, my boyfriend would all say the same. And I think what I need to do, which I don't do enough, is say, okay, cut myself a break. And I didn't have to fix that problem immediately. It's going to take time. I didn't have to fix that problem, that person's problem immediately, but I can still be an ear to listen to. And my boyfriend is great about this. I mean, he's like, listen, well, as much as you are a problem solver, again, you can only control what you can control. And for me, that has been probably the hardest thing in my, 26 years of work experience is figuring, no, actually, I'm dating myself. It's like 24 years, is knowing that I don't have to solve everything. And it's not always going to work out the way I think it is. That's hard. It's hard for me. It's hard when you're in the moment. It's hard when you're sort of decompressing and evaluating what you did. Did I do it right? Did I do it wrong? And you just kind of have to keep swimming and moving forward. And if you can do that, you will be okay.
Yeah. It's like, where do you stop burdening yourself?
Yeah.
Right? Like, so that you can do the things that are like the biggest things, the biggest boulders, right? Because it's
Absolutely.
like that whole analogy with a jar, like if you put all the pebbles in and then you're not going to be able to fit the big things, and then, you know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
And so, like, for you, because, like, I think we're bred this way in corporate, right? Which is like you drive, and in a patriarchal system, right? You go, it's kind of like never enough, like you don't stop. So or maybe you don't, but like, how do you sit there and say, damn, like, I'm building this empire and I'm doing some things and I'm making a difference and I can enjoy and celebrate that? Like, do you allow yourself that enjoyment in the journey ever?
I'll be really honest. It's hard for me to do that. And I think that's just who I am, and when I was a banker and they used to say this, you're only as good as your last deal, right? So for me, and building your career and building a business and revenue and all of the things that we did, you are only as good as your last deal. And I remember, as I started hiring and became managing thousands of people around the world, it's like, you're only as good as your last deal. So that's kind of ingrained. I also do think that my nature of how I was raised is ultra competitive. Thanks, Dad and Mom. That's not a negative. I'm very competitive. So that keeps me going, and I thrive on that. And not just, I'm not competing necessarily with others, just myself, right? And I should have been a golfer, right? Because you're constantly competing against yourself. When I reincarnate, I'm going to be a golfer. But so I think for me, no, I don't. And I get that feedback from my team and from people around me, like, you did this, you did that. Why aren't you taking? It's just, and I'm not embarrassed to say that. That's just who I am. It's like, people ask me what my self-care, my wellness, and I'm like, that's just not who I am. And if I'm okay with that, why can't you be okay with that? Right. I've really started talking about it a lot lately, because I think people are made to feel guilty if they don't have how are you taking time for yourself? Maybe my taking time for myself doesn't look like what you're taking time for yourself, but it's okay with me. And so we have to find our own journeys and we have to navigate through. So for me, I'm not a big, I celebrate. I particularly love to celebrate others. We're great at that, particularly women. One of the things that we've instituted at Luminary since very early on was we share a personal highlight at the start of our team meeting. We share a community highlight to talk about the community. And then at the end of the meeting, we share a win and a shout out. And so we're not only shouting out others, we're talking about a personal win. And I still, as much as we do it every week and my team is wonderful at it, I'm still not that great. It's just, I'm not a bragger, right? And I know I teach this whole thing around self-promotion. I'm happy to self-promote, but, and talk about accomplishments, but I move on pretty quickly from them. If that makes sense. So here's my win. Great. Okay. I won that. Now I have to get the next thing, or I have to make the next impact, or I have to solve the next problem. And again, that doesn't mean that's right or wrong, but that's right for me. And that's just how I move through my job, my career, my personal life. Take the win and move on and go for the next one.
Yeah. It's like, it sounds like you are where you are with it, and you're comfortable with where you are in this moment. And when it's interesting because when you talk about other people, the thing that came up for me was it's like they are looking for permission to do it for themselves.
Right.
It's what it sounds like. Which happens, I think. It's like,
exactly.
Well, I need to see you doing it so that I can give myself permission to celebrate myself. And the reality is that is the individual's work to do. Like you know what I mean? Nobody's going to give us permission. We have to give ourselves permission. If it's something you feel you need, I want to celebrate myself. Go freaking do it. Nobody's holding you back except you, right?
That's exactly right. And so when someone says, oh, well, you can't relax, why don't you go get a massage? Well, that's great. If you want to go get a massage, amazing. I don't do that. I have different ways to quote unquote relax. And it's funny. I mean, people that just, recently come into my life, or my boyfriend's family, they'll say, whoa, you don't really sit down. That's okay. Because that's me. If I want to sit down, I'll sit down. I think that, and I don't want anyone to feel guilty in those moments. It's like the same thing with my former life as a banker, or my life thus far building Luminary as an entrepreneur. My journey is not your journey. I don't want to compare myself to someone else. We do it. That's human nature, but I've got to get through what I need to get through. And let me tell you, I like to say this last 20 months has been the hardest 20 months of my career. And that's saying a lot, working in banking for 20 years with a bunch of men. But it's also been the most rewarding because of how we've accelerated our growth, of course, but more importantly, the impact that we've had and what I've been able to see my team do in these moments. Things that I would have never been able to see them do because we would have just been focused on the next day and the next day and the next day. And each of that team, those that are relatively new or those that have been here since the beginning of the pandemic, that has really given me so much like oomph and charge and energy, because you're only as good as your team, right? When you manage a team, any good manager or leader knows you hire the best talent because you want them to be better than you. And ultimately, you want them to take your job. So I love watching my team. I love being able to see where I think they have skills that they don't even see yet. And I think that's been such a benefit of the pandemic. But those hard things we've all gone through. And by the way, we're still going through them. We're not out of this. And as I watch Europe go back into lockdown, I'm worried. And I'm worried about women, and I'm worried about caregivers, and I'm worried about, the new professionals that have started their careers in a virtual environment. There's a lot of, and I'm worried about my company. There's a lot of worry that I have that personally and emotionally I have to navigate as well, in addition to just sort of getting through that day to day.
Yeah. And I'm curious, when it just sounds like there's a lot, I think there's a lot of pressure it sounds like put on you, but also I think women that are visible in general, it's like I just feel like there's a lot of like you should be doing this and you should, and there's just all these expectations, and
Yeah.
it's like, look.
Yeah.
So
Well,
I'm just
totally. And I think with social media, it has gotten so much worse. And again, the platforms are great, but I remember, I mean, I've had so many, oh, you need to do this. You need to post this times a week. You need to be on this. You need this is, it's like, I have to also run my life and my company, right? So there's only a certain amount of things I can do. We'll just go hire someone to do it. You know what? For me, I that's not my authentic voice, and maybe that will change one day if I can find someone that really can talk like me. Great example. Everyone kept telling me you need to be on TikTok. I'm like, I don't have time. And Amanda, who is our head of social and digital at Luminary, I said to her, listen, I don't know how to do all the stuff in the background, but if I took a video of a tip or something, because I'm constantly asked, like, can you just talk for a minute on this topic? And she's like, great, if you give me the video, you do that, I'll do the rest. I'll do the creative side and the make it all pretty. Great. So that's kind of a nice little partnership. I don't even know how TikTok works, but she does that. But I make the time every week and I do a quick video. That doesn't mean I have to spend hours and hours and hours. It also doesn't mean she has to spend hours and hours. Where do I focus my efforts? I focus it on the business. I focus it on, my members like you, and then LinkedIn. If you're on my Instagram, and we're on Instagram right now, you can go to mine. It's a mixture of my personal life, my personal opinions, a little bit about Luminary, and sort of everything. When you go on LinkedIn, it's much more about the business and my platform and my thought leadership. And then Twitter is like, I might get it, once a week. I don't have time. And I think there's this, you have to do everything in order to be successful. Bullshit. You have to do the things that you feel are making you successful and your own definition of success. Nobody else's.
So two questions on that. Number one is like, do you feel like you're able to just be like Teflon and like let the stuff slide, where it's like, you should do this, or why aren't you doing this, or where's the self-care? Like, are you able to Teflon that stuff? Like, that, I guess I'll just start with that, because I mean, that's a lot of inundation of expectation.
Yeah, I think for a long time for me, so listen, I really have spent time in two very different worlds, right? So in the finance world, I remember when LinkedIn, we weren't even able to look at LinkedIn on our work computers, right? So because the back then, when it started, it was like that was all about getting a new job. Then it became, okay, you can use it, but you were very, very hamstrung because you were representing the bank versus yourself. And also you weren't required or asked to be on every kind of social media. That was just not part of it. I was literally able to focus on my job. And then when I remember distinctly, Luminary hadn't opened our physical doors yet. I was having a team meeting in my apartment because we didn't have an office yet, and I had all of my team there. And my at the time, Chanel Cathy, who was running our PR, hi Chanel, she said, Kate, it's time to make your Instagram public. And I said, I'm not making my Instagram. That's my personal. And she said, no, you are going to be a public figure now. You have your own company. You need to make it public. And I said, well, if I make it public, I'm not scrubbing it. It's me. And I said, so that's my compromise. If I do that, then it's me, and I don't really care about my brand or my image. It's me. That's one of my challenges through my career is what you see is what you get, whether people like it or not. That's just who I am. And I have learned to be comfortable with that. But I do think that there is a lot of expectation that you do everything. And it's taken me a while to get comfortable with, I not only I can't do everything, I don't want to do everything. I want to focus on the things that I feel like are having an impact that will help Luminary grow as a company, help me grow as a leader. That's what I've had to get comfortable with. And I'm on the closer end of, a few years away from turning 50, very far away, 4 years,
Very
but
far, yeah.
very far. But I think that has come a lot with age and maturity and my experience and saying, my resume, my results, my relationships, they speak for themselves, and that's what I'm going to lean into. I did that was my TikTok this week, was about the 4 R's, and um, that's what I have to focus on, not the noise. And it's hard. I mean, listen, I'm not perfect, so I'll get on that Instagram and go, what the, I can't. How are they doing this, or they got that? And it's frustrating, but I think we have to be also okay to say that some days you're struggling with that, and I do too.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is why I was so excited to have this conversation, because I know what you see is what you get. This is the real deal, and that you struggle with, like, right, like, not doing it all and being choiceful. And I think that especially in a world in which, like, there could be perceptions about all these resources, because you
Yes.
have this company, and and like those are not true. They're never true. I remember interviewing, like, and people were like, "Oh, well, I don't know if you're going to be able to do this because you have, like, big company resources at Unilever." And it was like, I was on brands. I had to scrape for every dollar. So, like, the perception is,
Yeah,
it's just
yeah,
never,
yeah,
it's never
yeah.
accurate, right? Um, but also, it's like, I mean, that's everything, right? It's just in a world where it's moving so much faster than it ever has, where
Yeah.
all you could do is just absorb information and never actually do, because it, everything tells us, like, it's never enough. It's never enough. But we have
No,
to
and
debunk that. And
I mean, it's never enough. I mean, I give you a good example, and this, that I didn't raise money to launch Luminary. I've self-funded it. Um, we're a profitable organization, which is remarkable considering the pandemic. But great. When I say that to people, the next thing out of their mouth, okay, so then what's the next plan? Are you going to raise money? Are you going to, it's like, wait a second. First of all, can't you just say, wow, that's great, and you're having tremendous impact? I don't say to Amazon, oh, you're
right,
making X billions of dollars. What's next? Right? I
right.
mean, why do founders in particular, I think it's even more for women? We are okay, the amount of times I get asked, so what's your plan? Why are you asking me that? Right? I mean, I think
Yeah.
it's like, how about you just focus on what I'm building right now? That's in my mind, that's how I build a sustainable and profitable
Mm,
organization. And have real impact. And, when I get an email or a text or, whatever saying, hey, this is what I happened at me, or this is the member I met, or this is the collaboration, or whatever that is, that's my KPI. Yes, I have
mm,
financial KPIs. I have all of that, but that's my KPI. So why does everyone feel like they have to
mm,
put their ideas on founders, in
mm,
particular
mm.
women and women of color or people of color? Like, well, this is what I think you should do next. Well, thank you very much. If I wanted your opinion, I'm going to ask for it.
Yes,
Why are you
it's all
saying
that
it?
projection, but it makes me think of, how embedded this is, right? Because it's like, oh, well, when are you gonna have a boyfriend? When are you gonna get married? When's the kid? And it's just like, right, these
Yes.
expectations. It's just like, can we just enjoy, right, the journey? And a lot of times, the most profound journey, and of course I'm saying this, as a coach too, right? And personally, the most profound journey is one that nobody's going to recognize.
No, exactly.
Nobody's going to see, right? Oh, you healed that wound. Nobody's going to see you held that boundary, right?
Yeah.
And those are the things that actually transform your life and actually, you know, transform how you feel about moving through the journey.
No,
Right.
and I totally agree. And I think we have created a world that is so transactional.
Yeah.
Right. So what's the next thing? What's the next thing? And without knowing anyone else's lived experience. I mean, I could go back. I've gone through sexual assault. I've gone through divorce. I've gone through, fertility. I've gone through hard shit in my life. Does everyone know that? No, but they don't need to know all of that. They don't need to inquire about every little thing. What I want to share is when I want to share it. And, it took me many years to start talking about fertility and what I went through and what, the pressure that not only I was putting on myself, that everyone else was putting on me because I hadn't yet had a child. Or where are your, oh, well, you're getting older, or, oh, you're just a very career-driven woman. I mean, it's insane. And so no one knew in the background I wasn't going to come back and say, oh, thanks, Tosca, for asking me. I'm going through fertility treatment right now. Would you like to do my next shot? No, I just kind of dealt with it. And when it wasn't successful after 5 times and the doctor told me, that's it, you're done, like, you're never going to get pregnant, I had to get comfortable with that myself before I even could say that to someone. And it took me a long time. Why can't I get through my hard time in my own time? Do you know what I mean? Like, everyone has these just massive expectations. Luminary is great. When's your next one opening? I mean, before the pandemic, it was insane. Oh, you're here in New York. When are you opening 10 more? I'm like, I'm not. Like, give me some time to build the company I want, and then we'll see. And I think, to your point, I think there's a projection thing, right? It's like, well, I'm not doing it, so let me ask you if you're going to do it. And I think it's the same. We've societally grown up with all of these things in our brain, and I think for women in particular. And I spend a lot of my time at Luminary just understanding and learning about people's experiences and what they have gone through, not trying to fix it, right? Because they're not asking to be fixed. If they come to me or Luminary or with a challenge and they need support or help, great. But I don't want to go into any situation assuming I know what they're going through, assuming I know their background, their lived experience. I want them, if they feel comfortable sharing, just like I have, to talk about it. But don't make assumptions, right? We've heard that since we were little. It makes an ass out of you and me, right? So develop relationships and don't be transactional. That's kind of my big thing, as I've learned over my career, is this idea of being truly relational versus transactional. And I think the world has created us, and everything is a series of transactions. And I battle against that, right? It's the next win, it's the next deal, it's the next thing you're doing. But really embracing sort of the journey and making sure that, I don't like the word burnout, but that. But for me, it's just, I don't like that word. But I do know that I've got to be at my own pace, not everyone else's.
It feels like that's such a big kind of deconditioning journey for you, right? It's and I'm curious, because this is about the messy middle, right? Like, we were getting into the mud to say, like, when you're in those low moments, right, where you're not ready to share your story, or like maybe you just aren't in that place where you can reach out your hand and get support, like, because we're all in different places with that. So, like, what are your go-to ways of, like, getting through the muckety muck? And I'm not talking about the visible muck. I mean, like, I use the phrase, like, hugging a bottle of wine, like, you know what I mean? Like, but to really say, when you're like, I really don't know how I'm getting to the other side of this journey, like, what do you do?
Kind of the first thing that I do is I call my mom. And I'm really fortunate to have my mom and have such a wonderful relationship. And I talk to her almost every day. And that's really important for my mental health, because I get a lot of energy, again, in that kind of spirituality through her when I'm not there. And she's also just this everything happens for a reason, silver linings, you know, you can handle it type of thing. She'll say people would call her Pollyanna, right? She's always got like and you know what? That's great. I need that. And so she's that little bit of the yin to the yang. And so, you know, my partner, my boyfriend, he is very much the same. He's very different than me, and that's a good thing. And he will correct me in a very nice way. Like, you're going down the wrong path. Why are you focused on X? Focus on Y. And so for me, those kind of, and then I have a amazing, wonderful networks of all different kinds that I can tap into. Some of those things I may share, totally different things. Michelle Cordero Grant, who's a great friend, who is the founder and CEO of Lively, Sandra Campos, who's former CEO at DVF. I met these women through Luminary, and they have both gone through hard things and hard times in business. And so I can just text them. And there's tons of people I can talk. I could literally list like a CVS receipt of people that I could text and just say, can I vent? Right? Or can I bitch about something for a minute? I don't need you to solve it. I just need to get it out of my system so that I can move on. And that's Christy Wallace, Jen De Silva, Gina Hadley. I could literally, Susan Chapman Hughes, like I could do that. I could literally go through my phone and just say, okay, these are the people that I know. And by the way, it's a two-way street. They can and they do that. And it actually gives you this feeling of freedom. Like, it's okay to do that. And I don't have to have the in-depth conversation about everything that I'm feeling. I can just blurt it out and I can move on.
Yeah. Oh, I just want to slow down on this for a second, because it's not escaping me in this moment that what you're saying is I reach out for support and I find my community and my tribe. You built Luminary. I'm just saying, right? And being discerning about who you can go to for what, whether it's your mother or a chosen mother or a boyfriend or a chosen work wife or whatever it is, right? And I think, and I was literally having this conversation with a friend of mine, in the past week, which is you're not going to find it all in one person.
No.
And that's why we have, and I'm not saying quantity over quality. But what I'm saying is, but that's why we need to find our tribe and have the different pieces that we can lay down when we need.
Oh, absolutely. And it is not lost on me either. I think that is, whether I was looking for it in a different way in my former life and I wasn't getting it, I decided that, yes, I had a mission and I have a mission, but I wanted to create it. And oh boy, do I have that in ACEs, right? It's like you and I, right? I can connect. And I will say, if for those of you that are watching, and I know you obviously know Tosca, if you're watching, one of the amazing, and I think, again, remarkable things that you do and how you connect, every time we interact, you follow it up with a text of incredible positivity. It is, and even if I don't text back right away, and I'll text you back, or an email, the energy that kind of comes through that device and the love and the I care means so much, right? And so in those moments that can seem transactional about a workshop or a session or this, it's not, right? It's building on a relationship. And so, whether at Luminary I host a boot camp or a Whisper Network, whatever it is, my vision is that that's building relationships, that one-to-one, one-to-many, one-to-infinity. And that's not just me doing it, it's everyone doing it. And that's super important to me. And that's that list of people that I text, and that's my friends that I've known since I was in college. And there are many of those. And by the way, they're all different, right? So for one, I can tap to this, like you said, and I can go to this person. If I just need like, hey, I need a virtual hug because you live in Long Island and I live in New York City, Robin Needleman, I know if that even just, she could just send me a heart emoji back and I get so much out of that because we've taken time and care to build a relationship. I always say for a lot of women in my life, you know, when you hear you have one great love in your life. No, and it's not just men for me, it's women, it's my friends, that there are many loves of my life. And I will, hopefully they feel the same about me, that they can come to me at any time. But I certainly feel like, as much as I don't want to bother people, if I've gotten to that point where I need it, they know it. They know that I'm reaching out and I'm at a point where I'm needing them.
It's such a beautiful thing that you're sharing. And by the way, I do receive the acknowledgement, and I so appreciate that. And it's what's coming to me as you're sharing this, right, is this what is viewed maybe as a paradox of like type A, get it done and hold the space and make the time and be present in the moment in relationship. It's like, these are not two mutually exclusive things. Right. Like we could do both at the same time. It's like, I'm just getting chills, like, because I think sometimes we forget the side of the equation that is like just pause, because, you know, like, yes, you're working on my website. Yes, you're doing this, but you are a human being doing this. Yes. And how can we just honor that we're just human beings getting through the messy middle of where we're trying to
of everything, right?
Yeah, of everything. Yeah.
And it's okay. There's two women out, well, there's four founders of the Coven out in Minneapolis who I love. And they were one of the first women's communities that I reached out to sort of directly when I was launching Luminary. And they've been wonderful friends ever since. But we connected virtually with two of the four, Aaron and Alex. I think it was 2 weeks ago on a Friday. And we get on the Zoom and we're talking about work stuff. And you could all just tell we needed, like, it's a Friday. It's been a rough week. It's been a rough fucking 20 months. And I kind of made a joke about something, and it was a joke, but it was also just, and it was like everyone needed it. And then we were just vibing off of each other. And, you know, when I got off that call, yes, we got our work done, but then it was, we could just be ourselves and no judgment. And I think that's a big thing. I think we all feel constantly judged, goes back to those expectations. So when you find that network, those groups, those relationships that you can truly be yourself, don't hold back. And that's why at Luminary, I think I truly feel like myself. I don't hold back. Not that I did in banking, but it's a different world. And I think my team hopefully sees that. And more importantly, the community sees that, so that they can be their whole selves, no matter what they're doing, no matter what their journey or part of the journey that they're on, if they're in the middle, if they're on the periphery, if they're hanging on by a thread, that we are that community that will lift them up.
Yeah, and it's, you know, we talk about, you know, authenticity, and we talk about showing up as your whole self, and like, you know, I think that also the reality is, like, we're changing every day, right? So how do you hold space for yourself to, like, also be like, I don't want to do it like I did yesterday, right?
Yes, yes.
And also, I think, you know, there's just so much fear, I think, that people have, especially women of color and intentionally ignored communities, because, you know, they haven't been, they're not allowed to be themselves, frankly, right? To survive. And I also think that there's so much power in saying, look what's possible if we break the shackles. Look what's possible if we say, I'm not playing this game anymore. I'm not playing that game anymore. And I think that's what you do. I think that's why you attract so many people, because you're just like, this is what it is. I'm not pulling any punches, you know. Of course, you're a New Yorker, so what else is it going to be, right? Like, but like, what do you have to say to people that that hold back, you know? Like how do people step into the courage to own
Yeah.
where they are, to own the struggle, to own this is just who I am in this moment, and that's okay.
I mean, listen, I'm 40, as I mentioned earlier, I'm in my 40s, and so it's taken time, and I'm not great at it every day, and I have to also just cut myself some slack when I'm not great at it. I think for me, though, what has helped me over the years, and particularly in this journey, is listening.
Mm,
And being open and not being open to the what's next kind of
mm.
conversation. But I'll give you a really good example. And you know Surbi Lal, who
Mm-hmm.
was our former chief impact officer, now just doing a million things, including getting her PhD, but she's still on our board.
And she's
And
on next week. She's
and
my
she's,
guest next week.
oh,
Yes.
amazing, amazing. I think she might be my guest next week on Gold Digger,
Oh wow.
this was like, I don't know, 8 months, maybe a year into Luminary's journey. And she kind of pulled me aside and I said, you know, how are things going? She's like, can I give you a little feedback? And I love that she felt comfortable saying, and she always gave me feedback in a very, you know, positive way. But she said, you know, you are so demanding and hard charging. And it had come off of, we were at like a happy hour, a team building event. So the week later, and she said, everyone would love that, Cate, all the time. And I said, that's great feedback. I can't be that Cate all the time, right? Because I'm running a company, I'm keeping a company going. However, thank you for sharing that, because I need to be able to reflect some of the way I'm leading and managing in a different way and come to some sort of balance. And so for me, that conversation was super pivotal. One, I still remember it, right?
Mm,
Two, she felt comfortable saying it, because it could have had a very different reaction, right? Like,
mm,
I am who I am, and this is how I do it. And I have to constantly challenge myself, right? In addition to going through all the other challenges on that behavior and making sure that I am not just the get it done Cate, boss Cate,
mm,
professional Cate, like, oh my gosh, Cate. And that I have to also, especially for not just my team, but for me, I'm the light bulb changer, Cate, at Luminary. I'm the team builder, the fun, the fashion, the heels. It's okay to be all of those things.
mm,
And I think it's hard when you are younger in your journey. And listen, there are definitely examples of that, where you haven't yet found that voice and also
mm,
that confidence to be able to take that feedback and say, you know what, that was great feedback. I can actually put it to use. And my feedback was, I can't be that person every day because that is not doable and it's not realistic, but I can be that person more, and I can learn to
mm,
communicate differently in different times. And you know what? I think that was actually within the first 6 months, because I think that's when Luminary started the personal highlight, the community highlight. And that was, again, taking that example from Surbi of making sure we're, you know, giving everyone a voice, even if they don't feel like they have it yet.
mm. I what I love is that there was permission she was asking permission to share feedback, because maybe in that moment you wouldn't have been ready because you had a shit day or something. I
Right.
love that. And also, I think the big word, as like we're wrapping up here, and I want to honor your time because you probably have back-to-backs, but is discernment. It's like discernment in, you know, who you're listening to, discernment in what you're letting in. Like, I don't know if you feel it, but that it just feels like a big theme for today.
Oh, absolutely. And I think you don't have to wait until you're 20 years into your career to do that, right? You can figure that out very early. Listen, there's a time and a place for feedback from bosses and managers and things like that. But there's also a time and a place to say, this person is not the right person for my life or my job or my personal situations. I can cut those people out of my life, or not necessarily. I don't have to cut them out. They don't have to be my go-to. They can be I like to use the word on the periphery.
Yes. Yes. And I think the word cord cutting comes in too, cutting the energy with people that is not serving you, but keeping on to the good parts. It's not throwing out the baby with the bathwater always.
Absolutely. I love that saying. I love that
Yes.
saying.
Well, I know we covered a lot of ground. We've winded around. Is there anything else you feel like you want to share with folks around this getting through hard times? Anything we didn't cover or something you want to reiterate?
Yeah, I just think it's, utilizing the right people in your life, making sure that it's not, transactional, and also that it's a two-way street, and that it's okay. Things aren't meant to be, most of the time, things aren't meant to be easy,
Mm.
right? So take them all with a grain of salt. Unless you're a doctor, I always say to my team, it's okay. We're not saving lives. Mistakes happen. That's the other thing, Tosca. You're going
Mm.
to make a million mistakes. I learned this back to when I was little. You're going to fall down. You got to get back up, brush yourself off, and walk it off, and just keep going. And thanks to my dad, I learned that really early with my brothers and those boys in my neighborhood. And it's something that I live by every day. Nobody, you're going to make millions of mistakes. Nobody's batting 1,000, right? So just keep going. And to Sarah LaFleur, my friend and mentor, just keep swimming.
Oh, just keep swimming. I love it. I love it. You'll get through. You
You'll
tread
get
water.
through. And you could
Yeah.
do that, by the way, by, hey, help me. I need a little bit of help here,
Right.
right?
Give
So
me a
don't be
floaty. I
afraid.
need a little floaty
Yeah,
out here.
exactly. I'm tired. I'm tired. Yes, so
Yeah.
absolutely.
Well, thank you so much. And look, for all of you watching, luminarynyc.com, community that's global now for support. It's also a physical location in the city near Herald Square. But thank you so much for sharing yourself, for sharing your energy with me, and hopefully you're also getting your cup filled a little bit with this. But I'm just a big fan. I'm rooting for you. Everything you're trying to do and are doing in this world, it is enough. It will always be enough. If today is our last day on earth, it was more than enough. And yeah, just again, thank you. And I look forward to not seeing what's next, but I look forward to just enjoying you being in
Exactly.
my orbit for as long as we
Likewise.
can.
Likewise, I'm so glad that we could both make time and do this, and I get as much as you get from me. I get from you, and since it is Thanksgiving week, giving thanks to you for
Oh,
not just being part of the community and Luminary, but being part of my life. And I'm so glad I could do this today. So thank you.
gosh. Mwah, thank you. And
Happy
all the
Thanksgiving.
listeners and watchers now and post. And I guess ciao for now.
Ciao, bye bye.
Bye.